Over the years, I've gotten the opportunity to do a lot of different things. For about 8 years, I did music ministry with a band called Pearl Merchant. That's me on the drums. From there, I got the chance to move into some teaching and preaching ministry. This is me on the local cable, preaching at a church in my area.
You know, we have the privilege of knowing that we can go to the creator of our life and of this world and of this universe.
I was in ministry for a number of years. I remember when I was a young man, I felt guilty reading fiction. It came from the idea that if I was going to be reading something, it should be the Bible or books about the Bible, because anything else is wasting my precious time. I remember thinking in those years that if I want to learn something about how to live my life, then I should read the Bible, go to church, pray, and listen to sermons. But if I wanted to be inspired, feel a sense of awe and wonder, I should go to the theater or read science fiction. I recall having a very spiritual experience watching the third installment of the Matrix trilogy. The critics weren't too impressed, but I saw it multiple times in the theater because it was really moving to me. I longed to be part of something really epic and important. I noted over the years the effect that a number of movies and stories had on me. A movie adaptation of a children's book called City of Ember was one. Oddly enough, I even walked out of the first Twilight movie thinking about eternity. Don't judge. I was single, lonely, and to my credit, all I knew was that it was a vampire movie. Boy, was I surprised. These movies and others gave me more intense spiritual experiences, unlike the church had in years, save a few exceptions. At some point, I moved away from vocational ministry. I started getting paid jobs to do videography, and I realized that maybe doing video and making movies could work as a career path. But in my spare time, which suddenly was quite a bit, I began to catch up on my leisure reading. I quickly developed a fiction addiction. Authors like Orson Scott Card, Arthur C. Clarke, and even C.S. Lewis, and directors like J.J. Abrams and James Cameron became very dear to me. I was experiencing an entire world of possibilities and adventure that I had felt too guilty to step into as a younger man. In 2008, I directed my first scripted fictional movie called Cookie. It was intended to be a character story of modern fantasy, though in reality it was just a hodgepodge of crummy gimmicks and lots of shots of one guy doing things by himself. Not only was it so low budget that it was basically a cast of one, but we also totally skimped on the script writing and plowed right into the production. It was about a guy who gets a mysterious box of fortune cookies on his porch. The fortune cookies predict his future, but ultimately lead him to an increasingly dark path. It was not a success by any means, unless you count the fact that we learned what not to do. In fact, we realized an interesting phenomenon. You can kill people in your movie. You can have the bad guy win. You can even allow the good guy to become the bad guy. But whatever you do, don't let your hero kill a puppy. That's right, we actually had our so-called hero murder an innocent puppy for no good reason. So, after the failure of our first movie, I realized that I didn't really know how a story worked. I began to read books on the subject. One of my favorite was called Save the Cat. It gave an amazing amount of info on what all good stories have in common. The name of the book comes from the idea that your hero needs to do something that allows the audience to like him early in the story. The irony is, that if I had just read the title before making my first movie, I would have known that our hero should have saved the puppy. Over the next few years, I continued to make movies and short films. We learned as we went along. We have now made a number of feature-length films and hundreds of shorts. Our work has played in a number of film festivals in different states. With each project, I learned a lot about telling stories, and my love for the craft grew. I had lots of outlandish, big blockbuster movie ideas. I ran into a bit of an obstacle, though. I didn't have the money to make big movies, so the big ideas just started to stack up. After a number of years of making more practical movies like documentaries and short films, something occurred to me. There was a way to bring those stories to life without a huge budget and a massive team of movie-making professionals. Like lightning to my brain, the idea hit me that I should just jump genres. Instead of calling them movie ideas, I decided that they were now novel ideas. My career as an indie science fiction writer began, although I use the word career very loosely. Don't worry, I've kept my day job, but I've learned a lot about writing in the past few years. As I wrote, I began to realize the reality of another world within my head. The characters that found themselves splashed across every page were not two-dimensional like the letters and words that depict them. But in my mind, the characters were terribly lifelike. The locations that I wrote were vivid, and I found that I really just wanted to spend my time there. Over time, a question has popped into my head. Is this what it feels like to be God? I don't mean that I have anything terribly special to offer the literature world, but for the hours that I write in the world I'm creating, it's my place. The sun rises and sets on my ideas. The interesting thing is that none of my characters know me. I'm thinking of Ernst, a 19-year-old boy who has gone on an amazing adventure and found out that he is the only hope for the human race. He's a character in one of my books, and everything that he's experienced is thanks to my imagination. Has he ever thanked me? No. In fact, it's almost sad for me to say that he doesn't even know I exist. How could he? Unless I wrote myself into the story. All this brought me to the idea that writing fiction, at least in some small way, is doing what God does. God is a fiction writer. He said, "Let there be light," and immediately something that was only a fictional idea a fraction of a second earlier exploded into existence. We are fiction. The paper on which we are written is of no more substance to him than a page of a book is to you. We were once not, and now we are. What better definition of fiction is there than you or me? We forget it because we live here and see the scenery and breathe the air, but this place is magic. It's wonder. It's awe-inspiring. Every bit of fiction you've ever been inspired by is only a dim echo, reminding you of the majestic mystery it is to be alive. I've had a number of deeply moving times while reading a great book or sitting in a dark theater. I remember one such experience a few years ago. As I stared at the movie poster in the hallway after the film, I had a spiritual exchange happen in my head. I said to myself, I wish the real world felt that important and magical. As I thought about it, I realized I had to correct myself. Every ounce of passion and magic that any author or filmmaker or poet has ever been able to achieve is only an echo of the majestic beauty that our eternity can hold. I walked out of the theater with an excitement about what it meant to be alive. I had experienced a story, and I was reminded that this life is as if we are looking through a glass dimly. But in eternity, the beauty that we only glimpse in a haze will be totally realized. Powerful stories grab us at a place where I believe eternity is stored. In Ecclesiastes 3:11 it says, "He has made everything in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart, yet so that man will not find out the work which God has done from the beginning even to the end." Now, don't get me wrong, I don't know exactly what that means, but I take from it that the reason we gravitate towards stories with meaning, the reason we want to seek out powerful tales, the reason why fantastical fiction captures our minds and hearts is because it resonates with something deep inside. There is a place where stories of forever ring true because God has placed eternity in our hearts. The thing to remember is that no matter how magical any story that we experience from the pages of a book or the screen of a theater, those are only dim reflections of the magic that is actually in the world. What does it mean to be fiction? I wrote a character named Ruth a few years ago. She was dealing with a terrible mistake she had made that cost someone she loved a century of imprisonment on a planet that was not his home. To that character, her struggles were very real as I wrote them, but they were only real to her. To me, they were just fiction. Is it possible that my characters are as much fiction to me as we are to God? His pen tip intersects our world in sweeping, majestic strokes, but we cannot know him fully, any more than Tom Sawyer can know Mark Twain. Our only hope is that at some point he will choose to write himself into the story.